Hi, and you're very welcome back to the Final Whistle League of Ireland podcast here on finalwhistle.ie. I'm Breifne Earley, and once again this week I am joined by former Sligo Rovers, Galway United, and Dundalk FC player Alan Keane. Alan, you're very welcome back to the show.
Cheers, Breifne.
Now, we have an absolute humdinger of a show this week. We've got two guests that just 2 years ago stood in opposite dugouts against each other in a top-of-the-table clash between Dundalk and Cork City. They are the two Johns, John Gill and John Caulfield, neither of them with those clubs at the moment. We're going to be hearing from both men about what they're up to at the moment. John Gill obviously enjoying his semi-retirement from the game in terms of his time away from the game since his departure from Dundalk 6 months ago, while also we'll be joined by John Caulfield, who's talking about his renaissance in the First Division with Galway United. Alan, we've recorded both the interviews already, so we know what's coming, but some pretty interesting conversations with the two men and some really good insight maybe into the league and the clubs within the league as well, from their experience.
Yeah, like you're talking, the two lads, the amount of experience they have between them from managing, they've been managing for years upon years, and it's great getting the insight into the management side. I know we do have players on, and it's easy as a player, you just go turn up and you do that, but they're giving us the insights of the runnings of clubs and how clubs are run and the pressures of being a manager. Like everyone thinks a manager is just, get a piece of paper, let's pick the team or let's go out and do coaching. But there's so much others, so much more to it. Like you're talking, you have to deal with directors, you have to deal with boards, and everything, and the pressures of, as we'll hear in the interviews that, 2 or 3 games of defeat, you could be gone. So that's the life of a manager, and who'd want to be a manager?
Yeah, budget, social media, even the press all come into the conversation over the next hour or so. But first, before we get chatting to the two Johns, let's maybe have a little look back at the weekend's action. One of the big talking points, I suppose, was the postponement of the game in the First Division between Cabinteely and Galway. We'll talk to John Caulfield a bit about that later on, but your own thoughts on that. Obviously, COVID is the reason for that. There's an outbreak within the camp in Cabinteely. No specifics in terms of numbers, but enough to maybe not be able to field a team on Friday evening for them. Is that a bit of a worry for the league going forward?
It is, and it was a strange one. They were in Dublin, so whether they got the test laid, we don't know the ins and outs of it, obviously, but clubs are struggling as it is, having to put 2 buses on at games, bringing, so they had 2 bus loads from Galway. I just like to know who covers the cost there, or what happens. Is it the team why should a team that has been maybe, lucky enough not to have got any COVID travel to Dublin, and then the team that's now has COVID, they're the home team. So I don't know. Going forward, the league, thankfully, it's been good so far. We're 4 games in the Premier and 3 in the First Division. That's the first outbreak. But as you said, is this going to be an issue going forward? It'd be interesting to see if one of the top teams in the Premier Division had an outbreak. You have to have 14 players, so it would be very, very interesting to see, would they miss, how many games would they miss, or what would happen. So
yeah, and I think the important thing that I would be taking from the whole experience is, I think from a financial point of view, it's quite clear Galway are going to have to just stomach that. Unfortunately, I don't think there's going to be any payback for that from the FAI or any other source, whether it's Cabinteely you might be alluding to. I don't think that's going to happen. But I think the most important thing now is what happens to the game. Is that rescheduled? Is it awarded to Galway as a forfeit to Cabinteely, as they were told would be the case? And how important would that be if that were to happen between two sides that potentially could be looking for a playoff spot or a promotion spot at the end of the season? And is that a fairly big decision to be made so early in the season off the pitch? More on that and on with John Caulfield. But let's maybe run through the Premier Division results of the weekend. We started Friday night, 2 games on the television. Not quite. Watch LOI. It's the nearest thing we're getting at the moment. St. Pat's and Derry. That game in Richmond Park, a pretty good victory for St. Pat's, while Bohemians had a Georgie Kelly penalty to thank for their victory over Dundalk. It hasn't really been going Dundalk's way over the last couple of weeks. Your thoughts on those 2 games? Did you get to watch either of them on Watch LOI?
Yeah, I did. I watched the Pats and Derry game, and to be fair, it was a decent game. Pats, again, as we spoke to Stephen O'Donnell on the show before, they're passing the ball really, really, really well, and they played some very good football. Jerry, I thought done well. I thought for a team, like, I hadn't really seen them, and I said, no, they're all right. They were organised, and then it was just silliness that cost them 2 yellow cards, and there was only going to be one winner after that. And what I like about St. Pat's is they didn't panic. They passed it. They went in and then came out and they got that goal, and then they sealed it near the end. So it was a good victory for Pats, albeit they got the look, I suppose. Declan Devine would be absolutely, fuming because he is under pressure. As he said, managers are under pressure from the get go. So he's definitely would have been disappointed with that sending off.
Yeah, I think we'll talk a bit more about that with the two lads later on, about managers and the pressures they come under really, really quickly. Declan Devine being touted now as somebody who should be a bit concerned about his position. That seems ridiculous, given that ultimately they were a kick of a ball away from qualifying from Europe last season. It's not been a great start, fair enough, but we are only 4 games into the new year.
Yeah, but that's the nature. It doesn't matter what you do. And you look at managers all throughout the world. You could win, you could win a league. The following year, you lose 5 games on the bounce and you're sacked. And that's just the reality. And as I said, who'd want to be a manager these days? It's just the loyalty is not there. You see some teams who are so loyal, who'll stick with their manager, and it has reaped rewards. And for instance, Stephen Bradley, everyone wanted to get rid of him after 6 months, 7 months in job. He hasn't a clue. He hasn't this. They stuck with him. They followed his the project he had, and look at them now. They're at the top of the pile.
Yeah, speaking of Stephen Bradley in action, you cover that game for Ocean FM down here in the Northwest. Sligo Rovers, Shamrock Rovers, 1 goal each. Nothing happened until about 83 or 84 minutes. And then Alan Manus, after we talked him up last week, he'll be disappointed with that Walter Figueres shot and how it just squeezed under his body. But Rovers, once again, they did it against Pats on the opening night. They really showed that when they need to, they can up that. It'd be lovely to see them do it unprovoked by having to concede a goal at the other end.
Yeah, but look at that. Alan Manus has been top keeper in the league. He's the top keeper in the in the league this year. Sure, he saved a penalty for me in the cup final in 2010, so he's quality.
Who let you take a penalty? That's the question I want to know.
But anyways, it was probably from he was standing around being cold, really, to be honest with you, that he wasn't. Keepers can switch off. The game in the showgrounds, there wasn't a lot in it. The draw was definitely a fair result. Both defences were excellent. I thought Sean Hoare for Shamrock Rovers was immense. You have Gary Buckley and John Mahon were brilliant, and Colm Horgan was, the back four of Sligo Rovers were excellent, as well as Bulger. But Shamrock Rovers only came to life when that goal was conceded. You could see the tempo, you could feel the tempo, and they created another chance after that, and they scored. I think it was an unfortunate OG by John Mahon, but they could have nicked it in the end too, with a cross from Sean Hoare into Rory Gaffney, who got he didn't get his header at all on target, so it was a bad miss. But I heard Stephen Bradley's comments after the game. He's like, they should have won the game, and they had enough chances to win 2 games. I have to I don't know whether I was at a different game. Maybe I was at a different game, because it certainly wasn't like that. And I think anyone that was at the game would have said, a draw was definitely a fair result. And, Sligo Rovers would have gone in the probably most disappointed team, and that's a big step up from it was a year ago, where they've now gone in at home to the league champions, and they're disappointed because, albeit, they conceded late. But I think Shamrock Rovers are still the team to beat this year. You're bringing on Sean Gannon, you're bringing on Rory Gaffney. So, the strength and depth they have is frightening.
And of course, don't forget Sligo, late goal ruled out against Dundalk for offside, and then I suppose disappointing to lose once you've scored in the last 5 or 10 minutes of a game. Disappointing to not seal the victory and go on. We could, in theory, be looking at Sligo Rovers with 12 points from the opening 4 games. We don't. They're sitting in third on 8 points, but they've got to be delighted with how that season has started for them this year.
Oh, it's without a shadow of a doubt. They just have to keep their feet on the ground. Massive game coming up this week. Ollie Horgan's team rock into town. It's not going to be easy, but they definitely, they're playing as a team, Breifne. You know, the last couple of years there was individuals, there was no collectiveness amongst them. So I feel like this year he sorted out the back four. Greg Bulger is a massive addition. Like when you're watching him live, he gets in the referees' faces, he gets in the opposition's faces. He's telling lads what he wants, and he's a massive signing. And if someone's not doing it, he's the Danny Vintry that we had. He's on their case, so you know that you have to perform. Plus, they have a bit of depth in the squad as well, defensively and midfield. So you have to perform, otherwise you're out. Struggling in the final third, maybe that will come. You know, whether you say like Johnny Kinney, I'm not sure he should have started the game. Possibly should have come on. Not saying that Johnny was just starved of possession. It was one of them type of games, you know. But definitely massive improvement from last year. And who knows, they have a massive chance to be in the top 3, top 4 this year.
Would you be concerned about their strength and depth? Only 12 players have started for Sligo Rovers this year.
Not so much. They have a small squad, so a couple of injuries to the bigger players. You know, the Mahans, the Bulger, you know, Niall Moran. Yeah, I'd fear from them then, but they still have, you know, they've Ryan DeVries who come off the bench. They have Danny Kane. You know, they have Shane Blaney, but albeit they're further back. I think the only thing that might struggle for Sligo Rovers is the final third, and they need an out-and-out striker. Whether Romeo pops into that position and finds them. Now Romeo was poor enough the last night. I thought Walter was very good, but look, it's early days, but definitely going off of what I've seen this year, top 4 is definitely a target.
Yeah, I'm not convinced by Romeo, to be honest. In 2019, pace to burn and could create his own opportunities, but just I found as likely to burst the back of the net as hit the corner flag sometimes. And maybe there's a bit of a hit and miss element to Romeo's play, but I think in terms of pace, no one can catch him. A bit more disappointment moving down the N4 towards Longford Town. Drogheda United in town, the clash of the two promoted sides. Both had very good starts to the season, but Mark Doyle just decided, I'm going to show what I can do today. 2 goals, at least one other assist, but involved in everything good that Drogheda did for the entire 90 minutes. 4-0 the final score. Probably flattered them, to be fair. Longford weren't atrocious, but just couldn't find the net at one end. Dylan Grimes peppered the goal a few times with some decent shots, but nothing really ever looking like scoring.
No, and I've said this on the show already before, that Drogheda are going to be a good side this year. They're not. Tim has them playing, and he has players that have a point to prove, and that can be a very dangerous thing, because when you want to prove it, when you're being told that, oh, you're not good enough at a club, you're not good enough at this club, and these combine and come together, and there's experience there, they're a good side, and they're going to take points off teams this year. As for Longford, I just think the honeymoon period is now over. And it's now going to be difficult. As you said, they don't really create too much. They have so much heart, desire, you know, and that gets you so far, you know. And I feel for them, because it is difficult. But until, you know, maybe this defeat is what Dara probably will say they need it, maybe to get back into the league and go, right, we're in a scrap now, you know. So they started off the league great, but as terms of quality, they don't have much quality, and you just worry about them.
Yeah, it's funny. We had Conor Hoy on the show a few weeks ago from Drogheda, and he spoke about the 2 fullbacks being top quality in the first division, and that he believed there was nobody as good as them in the Premier Division. And to be honest, I kind of took it with a pinch of salt, in that he was just promoting his own players. But to be honest, James Brown, Conor Kane, very impressed with both of them in the opening couple of games of the season so far.
Yeah, and too, like, you know, you as I said there, you've mixed these quality players, and I like what you said when Conor said it. I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe you're just saying this.
100%.
But again, confidence in the team, and that's what Tim Clancy has brought to the lads. Tim's experience. Tim has been across the water. He's been here. He's a good pro, so he will be. His man management is probably excellent, telling these players that they're going to be the best players in the league, you know. And that's what they breed off. And then you have the likes of Dane Massey, you have Ronan Murray's, you know, you have these lads there that have won leagues. So you're mixing a good blend, and I think they'll do all right this season. They'll probably be mid-table, which is a good return for the first season. But But as you touch back, you just feel for Longford, and I don't want to keep saying it because I'd like Longford in the league, because it's it's a team, it's in the Midlands, you want that, but it could be a tough season. It's a good battle down there.
Yeah, and of course you missed two names there that I think are going to be integral to that Drogheda push this year, and that's Darren Markey, who was also phenomenal on Friday night, or Saturday night, should I say, and Chris Lyons. I just thought the three of those, the two of those and Mark Doyle, when they just got going, they'll be a handful for any defence in the league. Final game of the Premier Division weekend was also on Friday night up in Ballybuffet, where I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble saying this with Finn Harps, but it looked to be fairly liberal in terms of how many people were able to get into the ground. There was definitely a lot of stewards who weren't wearing bibs over on the usual side of the ground, looking at Watch LOI. 2-1 win. Last minute, Dave Webster, not the usual target you'd expect to be hitting them from 12 yards out to bury them in the top corner. Fantastic finish to the game. Another goal for Adam Foley. Ollie really can't put a foot wrong this season so far. Top of the league still.
Yeah, and like we said before, Finn Harps doesn't get much luck. Now they're getting all the luck. Last minute was a great finish by Webster. His movement, even the cross came in, he's pulled off of the back stick for a defender, and you just wish there was fans there, because they deserved it. For the pain that they've had for the last couple of years of just flirting down around relegation. I was delighted for them. And what I would say is, Waterford has surprised me, and I haven't given them much of a chance at all. But what we said about Waterford is, these are the tight games that they lose. They're hanging in there, that they just lose by the experience. But I think Finn Harps, massive game now. Looking forward to the game at the Showgrounds on Saturday night. It'll be, or is it Friday night? Saturday and Tuesday, I think. There's 2 games next week, isn't there? So
yeah, the fixtures are they're playing.
Yeah, it's a double fixtures, I think, weekend. So look, Harps are going to come.
Saturday.
Yeah, so Harps are going to come. They're going to offer a completely different, test down to Sligo. Sligo are going to want to put one over on Ollie and the Harps, but Harps are flying it, and Ollie is you wouldn't want a better fella at the top than Ollie. He deserves it. He deserves it. For his interviews alone, he deserves it. And I tell you what did he say? He's 1/9 of the season. We're 1/9 of the season through or something. He's gas.
No, he gives phenomenal interviews, to be fair to him. Yeah, that Sligo Rovers game is on Saturday evening. We'll have a look at that later on in the show. In terms of the table, Pat's lead from Finn Harps on goal difference, 10 points from their 4 games. Sligo Rovers back on 8 in 3rd place. Drogheda on 7 in 4th place. Shamrock Rovers, albeit with a game in hand, they play Tuesday evening, probably the day this goes out. 5 points. They're a little bit adrift, but a win against Derry would put them into 3rd place ahead of Sligo Rovers on goal difference. Bowes and Longford Town on 4 points from their 4th games. Waterford on 3. They've lost out cruelly to draws twice now in those opening 4 games. So probably a bit of a false reflection on their performances in the season so far for Kevin Sheedy and his men. Dundalk, amazingly, in 9th place on 1 point, while Derry City, again, with a game in hand, they play Tuesday evening against Shamrock Rovers. They currently pointless in this league table, and as we said, pressure beginning to mount on Declan Devine. If we quickly cast our eye over the first division, we've already touched on the Cabinteely Galway game, which didn't take place because of COVID. A 1 goal settled it down in Cork at Turner's Cross when a late James Duna goal took all 3 points for a resurgent at Lone Town, who currently sit on top of the league table. Shells, they got their season up and running properly with a 1-0 victory against Wexford, while Bray and UCD played out a scoreless draw there. Treaty United and Cove Ramblers 1-1. Did you catch any of those games on Watch LOI over the weekend? It was a very busy Friday night.
Yeah, it was hard. I was trying to get the Premier Division games in, and then obviously I was doing the radio for the Clash of the Rovers. So I didn't really get to see much, but you look at the first division there. We spoke to Adrian Carberry as the first episode, and he told us his ambitions, that they weren't just going to be the whipping boys what they normally were. They had ambitions to of their own, and the great result down in Cork to go away to Cork. Still early days in the first division. It's such a difficult league. You look at it, Shells winning as well. Shells are the pick of the bunch, I think. Galway's game called off. They'll have ambitions, as John will allude to, that they'll want to get up. So as I said, I haven't really seen too much of the first division. It's a pity the way they clash. I just don't see why they put on games at the same time. It's not promoting the league at all.
No, I do agree with you. I think there's plenty of opportunity to put on a game maybe in the afternoon on a Saturday,
Yeah.
and possibly even a game or two on a Sunday, that where you could actually have options. Because I know I'd sit and watch 5 or 6 games over a weekend, and I think
Yeah.
a lot of casual fans would at least a passing opportunity. But having, I think, 9 games, or maybe not 9 games, maybe 7 or 8 games all at the one time on a Friday night is just, I know that's the traditional time, and hopefully we'll all get back into grounds and it'll be fine then. But when you're missing that little bit of a feel, you want to get as much as you can. And I think I prefer to see games played on Sundays and whatever.
Yeah.
Now, the women's games are on LOI TV most weeks. Last week, of course, international break. So there is a little bit of a fix, but that's not be all and end all for some people. I'll watch a women's game, but some people, for whatever reason, won't sit and watch it. They should, though. Maybe check it out on LOI TV over the weekend. The league table in the first division, because I want to get on to the chat with the two Johns, is Athlone Town, top of the league, 7 points from their first 3 games. Cabinteely, full marks so far, 6 points from their 2 games. Of course, the game against Galway not played due to COVID. And then 3 teams on 5 points, UCD, Shelburne and Treaty, while Bray Wanderers currently 3 draws so far, 3 points from their opening 3 games. Cork City also on 3 points, while Galway and Cove currently 8th and 9th on 1 point. Wexford still without a point to their name in the league this season. So going to be a long season for some of those teams, but I think the excitement is just beginning to ramp up there. 6 teams who haven't lost a game yet in that division. So it's going to be really, really tight as we go on through the next couple of months. Let's get on to our chat with the two lads. And of course, we mentioned at the top of the show, they were in opposite dugouts against each other back at the start of the 2019 season. It hasn't worked out for both of them at those clubs in the last 2 years, but John Caulfield in particular is back with a resurgent Galway United, and they look really, really promising in this year's first division. And John Gill, we're also going to have a chat with him. We might even talk about maybe a little spat that he got into over Twitter over the weekend. It's not why we had him on the show. He was booked before it happened, but himself and Dan MacDonald had a bit of a chat over Twitter on Sunday, and we're going to have a little chat and see maybe about what's been going on with his life since he's left Dundalk. Now, there's been a lot of talk about changes on and off the pitch at Dundalk in recent weeks. They haven't had the best start of the season, and we're going to be joined by a part of their former management team, John Gill, to talk about what he's been up to for the last 6 months and what's going on at Oriel Park so far this season. John, you're very, very welcome to the programme.
Hey guys, how you Alan? How you Breif?
John, how's it going?
I'm great. And yourself? You look well rested anyway. A few grey hairs kind of growing back to a bit of black maybe after the last 6 months. Nice rest.
I haven't quite got to just for men yet. No, I'm going to go stick gracefully with grey.
You won't go with this look, John, no?
Keno, yeah. Well, Keno, you used to have wavy hair one time. It waved goodbye to you one day, I believe.
John, you're in good spirits. Talk to us about the last 6 months, I suppose, since you've departed from Oriel Park. What's life been like for you? Have you been following much of the action of the league? Yeah,
absolutely. I've been watching a lot of games. Unfortunately, haven't been able to get to many games because of obviously restrictions, but I keep an active interest in it. It's been interesting. It's been fascinating watching the way clubs are going about their business, and I actually think the league is really wide open this year. I still think whoever finishes above Rovers will win it, but the likes of Pat, the best team. I've watched obviously a lot of games so far, and Pats have really impressed me. I think Pats are the side that have really impressed me most at the moment. But I think with Rovers getting in, with Richie Towell coming in mid-season, it's going to be the team that finishes above Rovers that will win the league.
And John, I suppose we're going to go to the question what everyone has been asking everyone every week is the situation at Dundalk. And I know you were involved in it previously. What do you make of this year's setup, and is it a surprise to you?
It's strange, Alan. Listen, people would say it's similar to when I went in with Vinny, but it wasn't really, because I knew what the parameters of the job were. My parameters were. I was brought in to help because I had the license. I went back because I have a lot of affinity with the club. I wasn't overly friendly with Vinny. I would have signed him as a player. I actually let him go as a player as well. But when I met him and saw what he wanted, I liked what I saw. It gave me. You were up in that dressing room, Keno. It always fascinated me to see what it would be like to be in a real winning mentality dressing room with top players. It didn't disappoint me. We had a great year in our first year there in 2019. You've played with some of these lads like Shields and that, great lads, really professionals, good lads down to the core as well. They work hard, but they're good fun to be around. But they're driven lads, and I feel sorry for the likes of those guys at the moment, because I'd imagine they're a little bit despondent. I think what happened when Vinny left, obviously with the new manager coming in, I could have stayed on. I was asked to stay on, and I chose not to for reasons close to myself. I just didn't feel comfortable. It was always going to be difficult for the new manager coming in when he hadn't got the qualifications and wasn't even. People forget that Vinny had enrolled in a pro license course. The new guy coming in hadn't even done that and wasn't had any way of doing that. So that was always going to lead to problems. I think what happened in Europe last year when they were kind of reprimanded over the shadow coaching end of it, they got a large fine. They really should have been making plans then, in my view. They will tell you that they did, in the fact that Shane Keegan came in because Shane had a pro license. What I don't understand at the moment, Alan, is I'm looking at Pat's same kind of situation. Alan Matthews is there with the pro license, a bit like when I was there. Stephen is allowed to do his work on the sideline. I don't understand why Filippo isn't in the dugout. I don't get that. Now, have the FAI told him not to? I don't think so. I don't know what the situation is there, and that has to lead to some sort of confusion with players and getting messages across. It's just not working.
Yeah, it's a strange one, because obviously Shane Keegan is there. He had a minor role under Vinny's management. He came more into it then when yourself, Vinny, and Alan left the club middle of last season. And then he was announced, having been in that junior role effectively as propping up that management team. He's now the manager and the buck stops with him. Is that really what's going on in your opinion? Because from the outside looking in, I don't see any credibility in that argument at all.
It's difficult because obviously I'm not there, so I think everybody knows what's going on. I think we all know that Filippo's calling the shots. In fairness, same as in the Pat situation, Stephen O'Donnell is picking the team. Stephen O'Donnell is the manager. I think Dundalk maybe came out with this because I think the European aspect frightened them. I don't know whether the FAI maybe said to them, "Listen, you've got to pull in your claws a little bit." But once there's a pro license holder on the bench. Again, when I was there, I was brought in as probably I wasn't brought in the term manager. I was brought in as a head coach. I think my title was. I don't understand why couldn't have done it the same way. Shane comes in as head coach. Filippo comes in as coach. Whatever way you want to put it, but definitely, if you're trying to manage a team and you're sitting in the stand, to me, it's a very, very hard thing to do.
And John, you're well experienced in management and coaching and all that. And you've dealt with different chairmen and everything. How much of an impact or how different was it at Dundalk at your time to have outer influence? Is like kind of it's been in the media how basically the Zoom calls or whatever. How difficult is that to get on with your day-to-day footballing side of stuff? From your experience.
It was difficult when COVID hit. Like the chairman had been over a few times before COVID, but see, the year when the present chairman took over, we were winning things. We were penalty kicks away from winning everything. People forget that. So when you're winning things, people kind of take more of a back seat. The following year, which was 2020, the start of last year, we didn't get off to a great start by our standards. I think we picked up 14 points from, I think 27. I think. We'd won our first four, and then we lost a great game up in Tala. Do you remember the game, the 3-2 game against Rovers? It was a cracking game. It was a really great. It's a game actually that we should have won. We left it behind us. We were 2-1 up. Very un-Dundalk like. Probably should have had better game management that night. Jack Bourne scored a very good winner. It was a great game. Great advert with the night of the Jordan Flores goal.
Yeah.
It was a tremendous game. We had a couple of ropey results after that, and it's then what happens then is people then maybe start panicking and they want to have more of an influence. That definitely happened. Again, came to the European side of things, and again I go back to the College game. People thought that we should have been odds on to beat the champions of Slovenia. But there are not really many easy games in Europe, particularly when you're playing the champions of Slovenia. They were a decent team. And again, on the night, I don't know if you probably watched the game, I felt we should have got something out of the game. Hogan hits the post and we go 1-1. It could have been, they broke and scored 2 late goals. And then really after that, it did become difficult. But you're right, when you're dealing with, when you're trying to deal with maybe boards of directors or directors on Zoom calls, it's not ideal.
In terms of that the fallout of that, and obviously we all know that Vinny was let go by the club, and then what happened at that point then? Because obviously yourself and Alan were in position, neither of you are there anymore. Who made that decision, and why was that decision made, if that makes sense?
If on Vinny going or us staying there?
Once Vinny was gone,
well,
what were your options?
Well, basically what happened was Vinny was let go. I think Vinny was let go. We flew back on the Wednesday from Clash. I think Vinny knew himself. We probably both knew what was going to happen the following day. He got a phone call the following day. I got a phone call 5 minutes after he got a phone call, asked me would I take the game, would I take the team against Sligo. I said yes. I can't really speak for Rennie. I'll let Rennie speak for himself. I'd already made up my mind once that happened that I wasn't going to be hanging around. I told the chairman that. I said he wanted to know would I see out the rest of the season. I said I'll speak to you on the Sunday after the Sligo game. Let's get the Sligo game out of the way. Got the Sligo game out of the way. Got beaten 3-1. We missed the penalty. Pat missed the penalty. Again, it was a game ifs and buts. I thought we played quite well. We got beaten. On the Sunday, I spoke to the chairman and I told him that I wouldn't be hanging around. I said I'll pass over to whoever he wants to pass over to. He said, he asked me what I think about it. Wasn't too pleased. I think he thought I was going to stay on, which was never going to be the case. Spoke to him on the Monday. Got a little bit fractious on the Monday between myself and the chairman. He told me that there was 2 guys going to be coming in on the Tuesday, 2 Italian guys. Would I go and meet them and take training? Went and met the 2 guys on the Tuesday, went up training, and after the training session called the 2 guys in and just said, listen guys, I'm out of here. Rang the chairman and I just left. Rennie kind of stayed on for a little bit longer. I think Rennie stayed on for another week or a few more days. I'm not really sure. So I'm not really privy to what way that went.
Yeah, because it would be difficult for you with the affiliation you have with the club and obviously working with the players. It must have been a serious tough decision just to step away, because things must have got really, really hard for you, because like we all know how much you love the club and stuff like that, and seeing that you've worked with them players. So and me working under Vinny when he was there with Stephen Kinney, I could tell, and you said he got that phone call or whatever coming home in the plane, I could tell by Vinny's how would you say, his interviews. He knew he was coming to the end. And like for me, I just find it very, very difficult with the way the season is going now, and it's now carried on to a new season. You know.
Yeah, Alan, I think a lot of people probably it's a real case of be careful what you wish for. I think certain people up there, and maybe including some players, by the way, because you're not going to keep all players happy. There were a few disgruntled players as well. There was stuff being leaked to journalists. And Keno, you played up there. One of the things I'd have to say about that Dundalk dressing room, if you go back, it was watertight. Not much came out of that dressing room. Either way, team selection. You always know in the team. Like I would hear bits and back of this team are going to be playing or he's playing. The Dundalk dressing room was one of the tightest dressing rooms I've ever been in. Probably the tightest. A really top bunch of players who done their business right. So there were small little cracks happening then. There were a couple of other individuals involved. Like there was a guy that was brought over, a fella called Mark Burton. I know, with a guy from Man City.
Yeah, I was going to ask about him.
This guy came in. No, he's a nice guy. He came in for 3 weeks. He's more of a sports psychologist. He worked in the Manchester City Academy. He worked with the likes of Jordan Sancho. He's worked with Phil Foden. He's a very, very good CV. He came in probably as what I would call a specialist coach, so to speak, to work, maybe do one-on-one with certain players. Again, that was probably more of the boards You know, they're like it again. Dundalk was always a tight backroom team. Stephen and Vinny and Steve Williams. You know them, Keane. Like it was a close knit bunch. You know, things were just starting to go a little bit pear shaped, in my view.
Yeah, in terms, I suppose there's been a lot of turmoil off the pitch as well in the professional side of the club in terms of, I know Martin Connolly left the club over the winter, but also there were other senior members of staff that were at a management level that have been in and out over the last 3 or 4 seasons. There's been a lot of change up in Oriel Park.
There's been a lot of turmoil, like the likes of Colin Murphy, Breifne, a lot of very good people behind the scenes who were so-called volunteers but were crucial to the club. Colin Murphy, Simon Blackmore, Martin Connolly was a paid employee. He was general man, but Martin done a lot of good, very good work. Martin was a good operator. There's been a huge amount of change behind the scenes. Now you always need change. You always need change, and you will always get change in football clubs. But I think what's happened with Dundalk is the amount of change and the volume of it done in a quick period of time has certainly affected, I feel, the dynamic.
Definitely, yeah.
And then, again, I'm not privy to it, but to me, it's ludicrous. You lose 2 of your best players to your nearest rivals. I mean, Sean Gannon undoubtedly has been probably, I think we'd all agree, the best right back in this league the last 4 or 5 years. You were there, Keane, when he was.
He'd probably end up being one of the best players ever in the league.
Yeah, and then Sean Hoare is, to me, again, Sean Hoare is probably the quickest defender in this country. By the way, he's the quickest, probably one of the most aggressive, probably one of the most underrated players in the country. If rumours are led to be true, he was offered a 6-month contract. I mean, Rovers give him a 4-year contract. Sean Gannon gets a 3-year contract. That shows you how much of esteem they held him in.
Yeah, and that's it. And I watched Sean Hoare against Sligo Rovers on Saturday night. He was exceptional. Absolutely. He covered left, right, and centre. And I couldn't believe it myself.
He was immense. And I thought he was man of the match on Sunday. Yeah. He was immense.
He was very, very good. And I like Sean Gannon. Sean Gannon loves Dundalk. I don't think Sean Gannon would have left,
No.
You know, you have Sean Hoare, so you're strengthening your rivals that's coming up against you. And it doesn't happen in any other league in the world. And it's just, you know, so it does a lot for yourself personally, John. You've obviously your pro license and all that. Like I'm doing the coaching, doing my coaching badges, but I've kind of stopped doing mine now because I've kind of fell out of love with football and coaching because I just don't see as a clear kind of a pathway for you. There's so many pro licenses in Ireland. Like there's so many out of jobs. Do you see yourselves now as, we're going in doing a job for someone else to get it? You know.
Keno, I'm 58 this year. My day has probably come and gone. But I tell you, it's funny you talk about coaching. Since I got my pro license, I haven't worked. I haven't managed a team after I got my pro license. Now I'm one of many. Paul Doolan.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of John McDonald. There's huge amount of people. Now, it costs a lot of money to get it.
Yeah.
I'm asking myself now, was it worth all the time and effort going and getting it? All the financial time, the financial aspect of it. Did it help me? Yeah, bits of it did. Did it make me a better manager? Or did it make me a better football person? I don't think so. I don't think it would have helped. So I think this thing about coaching, if you ask me, it's part of it's a money making racket to bring in money into the governing body. Now I'll get into a little bit of trouble for that, but I don't care. That's what I feel.
No, sorry, John, but I actually agree with you there because I just find that there's so many. I looked at the pro licenses every year and I see lads, and there's barely any working within the league, and there's some of them top quality, have been top quality players and top quality, you know, managers in the day, and they still are out of it. And I just find for myself, I'm not going to spend X amount of money to go on and finish off doing my A and pro license for what? Because there's nothing out there.
We don't have an industry, Keno. We don't have an industry in this country now. I gave when I went to Dundalk 2 years ago, I put a job that I had on hold. Now, the job I was putting on hold told me it would be there for me when. Turns out I ended up losing the job. So when I left Dundalk last year, I hadn't got a job. I left the job. Now, my wife, it nearly cost me a divorce because it was a really good job that I had. It was a management job. It was being really well paid. Had a company car, pension, private health. I had a really good package. I parked that thinking I'd go and I'd be able to go back to. And do you know what? Now I've got another job since, and on far lesser terms, and I'm happy enough. Unless things radically change in this country, the likes of yourself, and there's a new breed of coach coming through. But how long realistically do you expect to get in a job? Now, Rovers are stuck. Rovers, in fairness, into their credit, are stuck with Stephen Bradley, and they've reaped the rewards of that now. Vinnie Perth is a penalty kick away from winning all four or five trophies, and he gets sacked 7 games he's let go 7 or 8 games into the new season. To me, doesn't make sense.
Yeah, in terms of, I think Keane asked the question I was going to ask you there in a different kind of way, and it really boils down to, are the FAI missing a trick here, even allowing clubs to go down the route that Pats have done with Stephen O'Donnell and that Dundalk have done here? Like, should there just be a straight line across? If you don't have a pro license, you can't start day one, end of story?
I don't know whether Aquino wants to answer that. Me personally, what was the point in bringing in the pro license and making people spend all this money on it? Okay, so you go and you spend 2 years, you spend the guts of €10,000 to go and do it. Now I done mine in 2007. I was on the first group that done it. Brian, there was a really good group. It was the FAI invited 18 people to go on it. It was my last year in Dundalk actually as the manager there then when we got promoted. I went and done it. Now the FAI paid half the cost, and at the time Dundalk paid half. So I was lucky that I was able to. But it did cost you money when you were going away for my A license, all of that kind of stuff. Anybody trying to do it now who's going to pay out €10,000 to go and do it for, like as Alan says, for what? Like, what are you going to? Are you going to get a job out of it? Are you going to? Is there a career path there for you?
And that's what, like what you said there. You have a job. And next thing you get 6 months, 6 weeks, 9 months in the job, and you're not getting the pay that you should deserve. So they expect you to do it for less. Again, my thing is now they're kind of nearly using the pro license as fellas to go in under lads that are just UEFA A going on to the pro license and using them as a backup. So then they don't pay the pro license holders as much as they had to if they were managers. So I just find it very disheartening. For me, I don't have a pro license. For you, it must, and all the rest must be very, very disheartening.
Well, I'll give you like Pete Mann as a club. Pete Mann is now Pete's.
Yeah.
So Pete has actually stopped doing it. You have to go and do his 15-hour CPD every 3 years. Pete Mann is not going to. I don't think Pete Mann's going to do his. Pete's going to say, no use to me. What's the point of me doing the? Because see the 15 hours you do CPD, that costs money as well, by the way. It costs a lot of money to do the 15 hours. Yeah. So you're paying for the privilege of what we used to do was, to be honest with you, when I started out, coach, when I was go back to actually even when I was with Pete and Drogheda, 2016, we used to go on a club visit ourselves. We were over in Derby that year. We went to Stoke and we spent half a week in Derby and half a week in Stoke. And we were given all areas. So we were able to meet Pulis, we were able to meet Nigel Clough at the time. So you educate yourself by watching the way clubs do things. We weren't allowed to claim that as our part of our CPD. That was off our own bat, if you know what I mean. So even though it was Pete that arranged it, he knew somebody in Stoke. He knew Terry Conroy, an ex-Irish international. Terry arranged for us to go to Stoke, and he arranged for us to go down then to Derby. So we spent 3 days in Derby and we spent 3 days in Stoke. And it was brilliant. You were allowed on the training pitch. You were given access to all areas. So you were educating yourself by being in that environment. Yet we weren't allowed to maybe claim that back as part of our CPD. Yeah. Now, I'm probably going to dig a hole myself here with the governing body, because I'm due to do another 15 hours at the start of next year. And you know what? I don't even know, lads, whether I'll bother doing it. That's being honest. I may or may not. I'll see. If it suits me to do it, if it doesn't clash with the job I have now, I may do it. Again, you become a little bit disillusioned with football at times.
Yeah. Final question, John, and you weren't disillusioned when this blew up over the weekend. And we had booked you on the show before this happened and before I spotted it on Twitter. You got into a little bit of a Barney with Dan McDonnell. I don't know how much you want to talk about it yesterday, but you took umbrage, I suppose, at a comment you made on Twitter about weak management in the previous management team at Dundalk. What do you want to talk? Do you want to talk to us a bit about that, maybe? Before
Not really. I said what I had to say yesterday. I don't like airing my dirty washing in public. But it's too easy for some people to go on Twitter and come across with these, blasé comments. do you know what? If I was a part of a weak management structure, I'd be still in Dundalk because I could have still been there. So I'm far from weak. I am a lot of things, all right, and I've been called a lot of things. But one thing I'll never be is weak. I have my own principles and my own mind. There's been a lot of stuff said, by that individual, and he's never spoken to me once. Even when I was in Dundalk, when I had to go and face the press, when everybody knew that I wasn't so-called manager, but I had to go and do press, they never took the time out to speak to me then. When an article was written about Vinny a week after he left, I don't really remember the article in the Irish Independent. It was a really, to me, it wasn't a very reflective piece, because you go and speak to only certain people. You should go and speak to everybody. Get everybody's point of view. Don't just speak to a selective few. That's my view. I said what I had to say yesterday. He said what he had to say. I'm sure we'll meet along the way, and we'll probably discuss it a little bit more when we meet face to face. But I said what I had to say, and I'm not going to have somebody saying that I was part of a weak management structure until you're in that situation. Keno alluded to earlier on. You don't know, like when you're dealing with people on Zoom calls, you're not even in the same room as them. You don't know what's going on. You may get information, people telling you what's going on, but then speak to the other side, speak to other people that are involved as well to find out what actually is going on. And then somewhere in between is the truth.
Yeah, well, listen, I didn't expect it to go on a bit of a rant there, but I completely understand the frame of mind you're coming at it from. John Gill, I know we've been friends for over 20 years since we both involved in Dublin City back in the day. Thank you very much for giving us the time this evening to have a chat with us, and wish you best of luck in the job. And obviously, if we see you back in football, it'll be not a day too soon. Talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thanks. See you, Alan. See you, Keno. See you, Beth. Take care. Bye-bye.
Now, the other half of the opening to the 2019 season in terms of the title race was, after John Gill's interview, was, of course, John Caulfield down at Cork. And things are a little bit different for John now at the moment. He's no longer at Cork. We might get into that a little bit in the next 15 minutes or so as well. He's currently with Galway, and they've put in a big investment and a big effort to get out of the first division this year. Things maybe not quite going to plan just yet, but John is joining us now to talk to us about maybe how things are going to look out over the next couple of months or so. John, you're very welcome to the programme.
Thanks, lads.
Good job.
John, of course, it's been an interesting start for Galway. Disappointed with how things are going so far this year, or is this a big part of a bigger picture of what's ahead for this squad of players?
God, I'm not disappointed, lads. Jesus, the season's only started. No, I've been very happy. You know, obviously I came up into the club late August, and we've done a lot of work over the last 5-6 months. In fairness to the board, tried to bring in morning training, and double sessions, and we have a lot of the guys in college, and the COVID actually has worked to our advantage in a way, because a lot of the guys are at home. But we're very happy. It's Galway. Alan knows this. Potential to be a very big club. We train up in Drum, Salt Hill Devon's grounds, fantastic facilities. We put a lot of structures in the background. We've invested a little bit, so have most of the first division clubs. Shelburne and Cork getting relegated has certainly put the competition at its highest, because obviously you have Bray and UCD and Athlone and Cove and all the other teams have invested, but Cabinteely. But I'm very happy. We put a good squad together. The season has just started. You lose a game, you don't throw the toys out of the pram. You just hold tough and work on the principles that you've worked in the pre-season, and it takes a little bit of time. The league is a marathon, and there's 27 games plus playoff games, so long way to go. But the most important thing is, I think there's good structures in the club at the moment, and hopefully that we can start getting wins together. But it's a long way to go in the season.
John, I'm going to ask you about how the move came about to Galway, because for me, as a Galway man, I've just seen so much chopping and changing at Galway for the last couple of years, and they're either going pro and then they're going back semi-pro, then they're going pro again. But then when I seen you announced, I was like, wow, like they've actually made a statement here. How did that come about from you? Like, you've got a manager who's won FAI Cups and leagues, various leagues, down in Cork, and now he's manager of a first division side who now have put a statement out and said, look, we've got possibly one of the best managers within both leagues.
Yeah, I suppose, Alan, first and foremost, I'm a League of Ireland person, and I have passion for the league ever since I was following it and played in the league. People, will always associate me with Cork City, which is understandable because, we played 15 seasons. I live in West Cork. I spent the last 35 years down there in my own family. My kids and that, they're all reared and from there. And, but I did my pro license. I'm a soccer coach. I was managing teams, non-league. I was involved, colleges I was involved. And, certainly when Cork City gig finished, I went back to, I suppose, a normal day job. And but I really wanted to try and get back into football, and probably the fact that I've been with Cork City for so long, and predominantly my only senior club really. I suppose people maybe felt that would I go elsewhere? That opportunity didn't come up. I was always anxious, and then out of the blue, we were going through a difficult time. Alan Murphy was relieved. I got a call the following lunchtime from someone asking me would I be interested, and I met Galway the following. I actually met Galway the following day, and by that night, we agreed. I suppose there had been a few things when I finished with Cork City that had come up. With only one club I was involved with, how you should take over, but a lot of people do a lot of talking. When you come down to the real questions, where's the money? How much have you got to put up front? How much do you want to invest in the club? What do you want to do with it? That tells the seriousness. So there's one or two things that potentially came up, but they just didn't fit right for me, And then I sat down with the Galway board, we had a chat. What do you want to do? I suppose ultimately, I have a fair idea how to run a club, how to run a team, how to manage people. And, I came in late August with a view of seeing out the last 10 games, put structures in place for this season coming. And then we ended up being in the playoff semi-final, and in fairness to the players, they ran through the wall and they did brilliant. And then the off-season, we're putting structures in place. But I suppose my scenario, Alan, is no different than, the way League of Ireland football has been for 30 or 40 years. Most clubs go from season to season. There's very few long-term plans, very few business models. Thankfully, maybe in the last number of years, some clubs have got their structures in place and trying to go down that way. But like in football, everyone wants instant success, and that's very, very difficult. But I try to put structures in place, and I think the club can see that there's a lot of very, very good work on in the background. People always just associate, the first team and the results, and I understand that because it's a results business. But at the same time, there's lots of work being done around the club that certainly has a club in a good position compared to where they were. But ultimately, at the end of the day, in any club, the board, the people investing money, they will decide to an extent where it goes to, because you have to, football is business, you have to invest. And, but I can only do my best. The Galway board, I think, can see what I'm trying to do here. I'm hoping they've backed me so far. I'm hoping I can bring success to the club. But I get up every day and I love going to train. I love, pushing the lads. I love trying to build a new team. I've got a very good staff with me. And it's a highly competitive league. And anyone just thinks that you can walk into a league, throw money at it, and you're going to win. It just isn't as simple as that, And but I have a good knowledge, and it's a new challenge to me, and I'm loving it. And I'm hoping that I can turn the club around.
And John, sorry, just last year, obviously, when you come in, you were second from bottom or wherever it was. Do you think that all of a sudden, and now no disrespect to the squad you had last year, your squad you have this year is way better than the squad you had last year. You've done exceptional with the squad you had last year to even get to the playoffs. So do you think that would have, say, put the board this year, put maybe nearly extra pressure on you? Because I feel like managers in this league or in our leagues nowadays, they don't get enough time. You get 9 months. Like, I look at, say, Shamrock Rovers, Stephen Bradley, they wanted him out after 9 months, fans. Look at them now. Was it 3-4 years on? He's won a league, he's won a cup. And you can go around all the leagues. Do you find that managers, like you're only a year and a bit into the job, that you do need your time to put your stamp on it, especially that the seasons are only 9 months. I just find, especially me, my experience at Galway and being from Galway, is they go from pro to semi-pro to pro, and then sometimes when they go back to semi-pro, they'll stay for 3 years semi-pro, and then instead of being the opposite way around. I don't know, what's your take on that, or in the league as a whole?
I suppose, Alan, my passion for League of Ireland is that I can see a brilliant model and a brilliant league. And I genuinely mean that. If we could get the structures right and get the clubs run properly. And I know people are saying you're dreaming, and unfortunately, perception in our league is very poor. To the outside business world, to the other sports, our perception is poor. But like, what you're after saying is the exact problem with the league, that there's too much of one season, we'll have a cut. If it doesn't work out, we'll go back part-time. And that's just reflective right across the country for most clubs. Okay, at least you mentioned Shamrock Rovers. They were travelling around Dublin for 20 years. They hadn't even got a ground. You know, in fairness to them, they kept the club alive, they kept going. They sacked a number of managers after Michael O'Neill, including Michael O'Neill, effectively, who brought them to Europa League, which is the first time that they had been in the Europa League. And then they went through Stephen Kenny, Pat Fenlon, two serious managers, Trevor Crowley, you know, and probably Stephen Bradley probably benefited from the quick sackings of the 3 other lads previous to him, because he had a difficult start. He was getting a bit of stick, but fair play, they stuck with him. He had confidence in himself, and now he's delivered. And unfortunately, you know, it's a scenario where, as a manager, would you like a 3 or 4 year plan? Of course you would. But at the same time, you'd be silly to think that at the same time, if you lost 3 or 4 results, that you might lose your job, because that's just the way it's gone at the moment. And social media has played a huge part. Boards tend to react very quickly to fans, you know, turning on the manager very quickly, and it is a huge challenge. And it's very difficult. So going forward, you have to have investment in the league. You have the investment in your club, and you know, wouldn't it be brilliant if all the clubs had major sponsors, people who would give them a certain amount of money over 3 or 4 or 5 years, so you could have a plan in place, like any business. You go out tomorrow morning, you set up a business, you have a plan in place. How are you going to do it? How are you going to achieve your goals? How are you going to invest it rightly? And in football, it's sometimes a lot of it is very short term. All I can do here in Galway, which I have done since I met the board, they're very enthusiastic, really good people. I've been showing them what I think can happen. I've been doing things that I think that will improve the club. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I've no control other than I'm here until the end of the season. You know, I would hope to think that they could see that the club is going to improve, that we're going to be successful, but you just don't know. But certainly, it is a difficult one for managers, because you know, we're in a league where, and you know this, Alan, better than anyone, we have part-time teams, we have full-time teams. You know, we have different amateur teams, and we probably need to get to a point where we need a professional Premier Division with everyone full-time, but we need to get to where players get paid 52 weeks a year. If they're two-year contracts or 3-year contracts, they get paid. And I make the example that I lost a number of players from Cork City after winning in the Aviva, after winning in the league, playing in Europe, who ended up with Rochdale in England. And Rochdale, the manager at the moment is a lad called Brian Barrymore, a Cork lad, very good lad, a good friend of mine. But they were able to offer double the wages, and they're bottom of League One. They never play in Europe. The training facilities were, compared to what was in Cork, were way behind what Cork had. But still, they can offer double the wages, a two-year deal, a 3-year deal, and the lads are guaranteed to get paid every week. And unfortunately, are they guaranteed to get paid in Ireland every week? Thankfully, in Cork City, in my time, they got paid. But at the same time, we all know of all the cases around the country and for years of players not being paid 40-week contracts, 33-week contracts. And, you know, we have to treat this as a serious industry, a serious business. And ultimately, we need, I keep saying this from the top, we need a League of Ireland group of people to run the league. You need 3 or 4 business people that are employed by the FAI, and their job, no different than any other job that you get. Your job is to run the league. If you can't, and if you don't do the job, you can't run the league. You're not good enough to run it. You sack the person, you bring someone else in. But you need a League of Ireland working committee, full-time people who can run their league, and you run it at that level, like it is in any other country. But until you get to that level, lads, we'll always be where we are. That's my opinion. But I do think that people have now seen that there's money in the league. UEFA money is coming in. If you got things right and the proper TV deals, but we have a long way to go, because there's a long way from where Shamrock Rovers are at the moment and where Galway United are, even though there's lots of good structures in Galway and there is investment, but it's a long way off where Shamrock Rovers are with their academy and with the investment that they're putting in.
Speaking of that long gap between, say, where Galway United and teams of their ilk in the first division are at the moment, and teams challenging at the top of the Premier Division, I suppose when you left Cork, it probably goes to show how quickly they've fallen from that pedestal right down to that first division level. It probably shows how good a job you did on reasonably limited resources in that last season just to keep them competitive. Do you look back and with any regret in terms of what's happened to Cork over the last couple of years for the supporters of the club, even just in terms of how far they've come down in the last year or two?
I would look at Cork was personal to me because, you know, I played with the club for 15 years. I was following the club as the manager. It was a fantastic time of my life. You know, I'd never been a professional person until I took the manager of Cork City's job, big manager job. I was like a part-time player all my life. I had a day job, trained at night, played at the weekend. So I'd never been a full-time football until I took the manager's job, and I gave up my day job to take it. And I was absolutely thrilled. It was fantastic. You know, do I think the club should be where they are now? Absolutely not. But look, it's very, very disappointing to see where it is with the support that was there. But look, at the same time, they've put people in charge. Colin Healy's a good lad. John Cotterley and Carney, Mark McNulty, and at least they've come back to basics with a local management team who know the ins and outs of the club, and I believe will turn it around. But it is disappointing to see where they are. But from my own point of view, you know, these things happen. You know, certainly, did we overachieve with what was there? There's no doubt about that. You know what I mean? We took a club over that was in the bottom half of the table, that was in debt, and they were turned around to compete with the best team that everyone says that was in the country, you know, ever. And they ran them close for 3 or 4 years and won a double and won a couple of cups, so it wasn't a bad return.
John, in terms of you're obviously in Galway, any move on the academy in the structures in Athenry? They bought the Comers or something, bought land in Athenry or something, and off the GAA, I think, was it? Is there any move on that since, or is that being put to bed for a while?
Well, Alan, there's a lot of positive talk. You know, the Comers, yes, bought the ground. The GAA sold it, and they bought it. And you know, there's been a lot of positive talk in recent times in terms of the last even 2 or 3 months. And you know, obviously they're looking for planning, but from what I'm led to believe, and I'm not involved in any of these meetings or negotiations, but I'm led to believe that, you know, the project is going to be on track, and that within 4 to 5 years, Galway will have a a ground, state-of-the-art ground built, which will have a number of pitches, 5 or 6, where the academy will train, first team will train. So, it looks very exciting. I'm always a bit slow to get too excited personally because I've been around the League of Ireland. I've seen so many exciting projects that haven't come to fruition, you know what I mean? So I'm just hoping it will happen. I think the main thing, the fact that the Comers are involved is good, because ultimately they do have the finance to get the job done, whereas in other projects that have gone on, the way for government finance, the way for FAI finance, whereas in this one, the Comers have been great backers of the club and they're fantastic supporters. So, it certainly looks positive. Will I be here, Alan, when it's open? I'm unsure about that.
Yeah, you might be. Once you get them up in the Premier this year, you'll be sound.
In terms, John, of the immediate situation, I suppose, a bit disappointing last weekend. I keep seeming to be asking negative questions. I don't mean that, but disappointment the way the game didn't happen over the weekend in Cabinteely. What can you tell us about the timeline of that and kind of how it affected your preparation? And is it an inconvenience, or is it just something that happens in this current situation?
Look, it's one of those things that happen. I think the one thing that's happened this year is that before we went back to pre-season training in late January, we had a Zoom call, all the managers, with Dr. Alan Byrne and Mark Scanlon, and they were warning us the seriousness of going back to pre-season training, of the protocols, and the responsibility in all the managers to make sure that all the players, were diligent. And then we had another meeting maybe 4 weeks later, and again, because we were in a unique position, we're classified as elite sports people. We were allowed to go back training when no one else was allowed to go back training. So it was an incredible place to be, and it was brilliant for us. And but they had stated this year that you needed to register your 19s. That basically, based on what had happened last year, but this year the rules were going to be quite clear that if you didn't field, have 14 players available to field, you'd forfeit the game. And I know from experience last year, when you get tested and it's whether you're negative, you're still ruled out by 14 days. So it effectively could affect not only one game, but 2 games. So it's probably the one area that I'm extremely nervous about, because I've been on record saying you can train and you might have a guy injured or suspended, but the COVID could get into your camp and could rule out half your team or most of your team, and that is the fear. So you're just, as a club, we're very diligent. We have 2 COVID officers, really strong people, and we're always testing every week. We're trying to do things right. We're trying to make sure the lads follow the procedures. So we went to Cabinteely last week. We travel up with 2 buses. It's part of the protocols now. You have to split up you can have no more than 15 in a bus. So it's 2 buses, expense. Obviously, we had heard there was rumours of issues of cases within the camp. But the fact when we left at 1:30 on Friday and the game hadn't been called off, I had assumed the game would go ahead, and that obviously, while there were strong rumours that you assume everyone's going to field. So at 5:30 after our team meeting, just before we left the hotel to travel to Cabinteely, we were only 10 minutes away. We got a call saying the game was off. So it's hard to imagine how it was left to go so late. It was hard to imagine that if the rumours were that strong from the day before, that we weren't informed. It happened, and we just sat back into the bus. The lads went back to Galway. We trained Saturday morning. I went down to Limerick to see Limerick, and we trained Saturday morning. So what you do, lads, it's just one of those things. But I suppose we just have to see what's going to happen, because COVID going into a club is serious, and it's certainly something that I'm always wary of at the moment.
John, just one more question from me. Anyway, you probably would have raised a few eyebrows with the appointment of Lisa Fallon. I think, would she have been the first? She's your assistant, yeah?
Yeah, Lisa's the head coach.
Yeah, the head coach. So I think, is she the first in the League of Ireland to have been appointed? I stand to be corrected, but you raised a few eyebrows. But no, Lisa worked under Michael O'Neill, didn't she? And she worked over in England.
Yeah.
How did that? You would have worked with her at Cork, would you? Or
Yeah, I suppose the most important thing is that, yes, I know a lot is made because she's a female and she's the first woman, but like, she has been, like, she hasn't just come in the door yesterday. You know, she has been going back to 2010, working with Michael O'Neill and Shamrock Rovers as opposition analysis. Then was with him as part of his Northern Ireland team. I came across her. She moved to Cork, lived in Cork for a number of years, and I came across her. She became involved in non-league with the universities, actually Irish universities. I was manager at one stage, and she did a bit of scouting for me. And then when I was manager of Cork City, she became part of my management team, mainly opposition analysis. But she's also done work with Jim Gavin in Dublin. And then obviously she went away the last couple of years and was involved with the Chelsea women's team. And, you know, and she went in there as a coach. And certainly when I met her last October when she was home, you know, she had sort of expanded her knowledge, her coaching ability. And like us all, we're always learning, we're always trying to get better and improve. So I have no hesitation about bringing her into Galway because I know her work ethic. I know how good she prepares things, she does stuff. It was just having the confidence within herself. Could she coach in men's football? Because it is a challenge. They're under pressure. People looking in from the outside, they find it strange. But I'd have to say that you have to ask the players, but I think the players think she's superb. And I see her in training every day. And, you know, really good coach. Attention to detail is phenomenal. And she's there because I think she's good. If I didn't think she was good, she wouldn't be there. And I've worked with a lot of good people. I brought in a lot of good people around me in different places. And she's as good as anyone. And, you know, I know there's a lot of scrutiny on her because she's female, but other than the fact that she's female, from watching her doing training sessions and the way she prepares and the way she delivers on the pitch, you can see that she has a lot of qualities.
Unfortunately, that is all we have time for on today's chat, John. I suppose we better acknowledge the time of day we've been recording this, because I think we started and you were in daylight, and now as we're talking to you, we can barely make out your face, with no light on in the background behind you there. What's it like being back in the right side of the Shannon anyway? Obviously born up this neck of the woods, educated up here before your migration south. Glad to be back around home?
Well, look at unfortunate lads. My parents are alive. They still live in Roscommon. There's been a great chance to get over to them every week, and their health is still touchwood quite good, even though they're elderly. You know, but my own family, my wife and my kids, they're in West Cork, and that's where the last 35 years. That's where I live. So I have two homes, if you like. But you know, it's great to get over to see my parents. You know, because obviously from Cork I wouldn't get up. You know, I might get up maybe once a month. Whereas now I'm going over once a week, if not twice a week at times, which is great because I'm over in 40 minutes. But you know, but I suppose you know, it's you know, I suppose with my West Cork, that's probably where, you know, my own family are, and that's where I go down to every weekend, you know.
Absolutely. Well, listen, John.
Lads, Galway's great. Do you know what I mean? It's great, even though there's no restaurants or no pubs and no hotels. It's still a great place to be.
Yeah.
Well, listen,
and
John,
great people come from there too.
you'd have to get that one in, Alan. And listen, John, it's an absolute pleasure to chat to you, and the best of luck for what's left of the season, all 25 games of it left from your point of view. I'm sure we'll be chatting to you again in the future. Thanks very much for joining us.
Great, lads. Thanks very much.
Cheers, John. Thank you.
John Caulfield there, obviously hugely experienced in the league as a player and as a coach, and now part of a reviving Galway United challenge in the First Division this year. I suppose for anyone watching the show on YouTube, you might have noticed that it just got progressively darker and darker and darker because of dusk falling as we're recording this on Monday evening. We just didn't want to interrupt John and ask him to put a light on. So yeah, a little bit darker there. You're nice and bright over there in Sligo, Alan. The electricity, you've paid the bill this week, have you?
Yeah, no, so I was saying there's a time difference in Galway, right? They're an hour ahead.
Something like that. I think we just put we kind of had the lights on. We've done this once or twice before.
I'll have to ask John, are they paying his bills down in Galway and get a word with them, you know? I know, yeah, it was great to chat to John there and John Gill before that. Like, two, as I said, two very, very experienced managers and successful managers within the league. And it's great hearing all the insights into them and the running of their clubs. And best of luck to both of them. Best of luck to John and whatever he does, and John Caulfield at Galway.
Yeah, no, interesting to hear John Gill in particular talk about kind of his disillusionment nearly with the system and the lack of an industry and the fact that you can't rely on it for work. And he spoke about that, about how he had to go back into a different job, and it's almost, as he mentioned himself, it's almost caused the divorce. Now, I know part of that is in jest, but it does have an effect in people's home lives and people's real world lives. And we've had that on the show for a lot of people where it's just not a financial reality that they can't work in this league because of the unsustainability of it.
Yeah, and I totally agree with him. I was doing my badges and I felt disillusioned with it, like, because there's no security there. And so until I had the kids that I realized, hang on a minute, this is not gonna work. Like, and I think John Caulfield touched on it as well. What could be done and what should be done to trying to have a proper full-time league and a proper setup. We've been talking about it for years, but until it's something sorted, it's just going to be always the same 9-month contracts for players and managers, you know, and you can't keep going that way.
Yeah, no, but I believe it's a chicken and egg situation of some sorts, because while clubs continue to pour money into first team budgets, playing budgets, on ever increasing wages, I think a sustainable model needs to be adopted rather than maybe just trying to get the best name every single season. I think it needs to be a league agreement and maybe a collective bargaining agreement through the PFA. I know that we've talked about it on the show before as well, and I know Alan Cawley and Stuart Byrne had a lot to say on it on Cawley's call last week. I listened to it in full, and I thought it was really, really good. Some of the topics that came up in the conversation with Harry McHugh and the new underage director there at Shells as well were huge contributors to that conversation. I think there needs to be more of a conversation about governance and about all that sort of stuff. It's not sexy. Nobody really wants to talk about it, but we are failing on it across the board in virtually every club in the league. And until clubs get their act together, I don't think anything's going to change, because the FAI aren't going to pour money into it while there's still a sieve at the bottom. And we need to sort out that mess and make sure that the money that's been going in is being spent in the right areas. And I don't know if that's the case at the moment across the board with every single club. Anyway, let's get away from that conversation. We have to wrap up the show. A couple of games this weekend, of course, full set of fixtures in the Premier Division and the First Division. There's also the small matter of the Derry City versus Shamrock Rovers game that kicks off tonight as people are listening to this tomorrow as we're recording it. Derry versus Shamrock Rovers. It's a big tie. Derry need to get a result in this game, or it could be a big gap that starts to open up at the bottom of that Premier Division.
Yeah, I just, you know, I can't see Derry getting anything from the game. I think Shams will win. It's just, you just feel sorry for Derry. It's such a good club. It just shows how much confidence is when you start the season. We seen it down in Sligo Rovers last year until the pandemic hit. They could have got relegated. That's how, when you're down there and as a player, when results aren't going your way, you struggle. But all I can see is Shamrock Rovers win.
Yeah, and then a lot of games over the weekend. Friday evening, Waterford, Bows, Derry City, Drogheda. Again, it's a big week for Declan Devine. He's going to need to take points from either of those two games. Any chance of taking them from Drogheda? Because they've been impressive as well this season.
They've been they've been impressive. Again, like I said, it depends. Who knows? As I said, I fancy Shams, but if they did nick a draw, you know, you're going into a Drogheda game with a bit of confidence. If you get tanked 4 or 5-0, well, then it's a different, mindset going into the game. But I think, you know, that'll be the game probably Declan will look to maybe revive and kickstart their season. He'll see it as an opportunity of maybe they're newcomers. We have a chance to get up and running here. So possibly I go for a draw on that one.
Waterford Bows at the early game on Friday evening. Ali Coote, Tariq Wilson back down to Waterford to play in their old stomping ground of last season. Bows, Waterford, it's been a fairly rough start for Keith Long this year. Waterford have battered to deceive at times.
Yeah, they have, and like they've surprised me in fairness. But as we touched on, they'll hang in the game. They'll do that, but they get beaten. That the inexperience just cost them. And I think Bohs are starting to find. I was impressed with Bohs the last night against Dundalk. They played well. They just need to get. They're just kicking into their groove, and I think you'll see a Bohs win down there.
Yeah, no, 3 games on Saturday evening as we're getting used to now. 6 o'clock kickoffs all. Shamrock Rovers host Longford Town in Tala. We've already touched on Sligo Rovers and Finn Harps, but for me, the game of the weekend, Dundalk and Pats, I think that's going to be an absolute humdinger. Pats, as was alluded to earlier in the conversation with John Gill, I think Pats have been the side that have impressed me most this year. And if anyone's going to challenge Shamrock Rovers, albeit at this early stage, I think Pats are going to be the side that are going to put up that battle this season. They travel to Dundalk. It's kind of win or bust at the moment for Dundalk as well in terms of where they've been to this season, because expectations are so high. They have 1 point from 4. That's not going to be good enough for a peak 6.
No, it's not. And Pats are flying at the minute, but I'm actually going for a Dundalk win here. I think they've had. I've seen Andy Boyle. He's had an article today in the paper. And he says, "Look at these. Us senior players need to roll our sleeves up and get at it." And I think they're hurting so bad. And when you're in that dressing room, you're used to success, and now you're on the other end of the table. I think Dundalk. I think Dundalk will beat Pats. I just think they'll up their game. Pats are very possession based. They'll find it difficult against Dundalk. I think Dundalk will get a home win here.
The final fixture of the weekend, Rovers and Longford. Thoughts on that? Longford struggling. 4-0 last week.
Yeah, Longford. Look, don't get me wrong. Longford went to Bohs. They've done really well. Came back from 2-0 down, but I just think Shamrock Rovers at home. I think I wonder how much can Longford keep it at is what I'm going for. I think maybe it could be a 3-4-0 win for Shamrock Rovers comfortably at home.
In a word, then I'm going to run through next Tuesday night's games because you're not going to be with us next week. It'll be Dean Zambro we're chatting to. Longford or Drogheda United, Shamrock Rovers. One word.
Draw.
Pats, Waterford.
Pats.
Longford Town, Harps.
A draw.
Derry, Dundalk.
Dundalk.
And Bohs, Sligo Rovers. Head over heart.
Bohs.
Oh, you get yourself in trouble down in the showgrounds.
No, they're at home. Yeah, so
First division games all on Friday night, all 7:30. Oh no, 7. They're not all 7:45 kickoffs. Actually, Bray Athlone 7:30. We might just keep it short again because we're way over time.
I think Bray.
Cork City Shells, good game.
Draw.
UCD Cabinteely, local derby, South Dublin.
Cabinteely.
The Western Derby, Galway United versus Treaty United.
Galway United.
And Wexford and Cove. Wexford get their first points?
No, Cove.
Excellent. Alan, we're way over time, but I think the quality of the guests today kind of mean we give them a little bit more time than we're used to on the show. We will try and keep it to the hour. We will try and behave ourselves. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a great week. We'll catch up with you all again next week.
Cheers, Breifne.